What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another great Ryze recap. I am Symone Stanley, joined by Carter Wilson today. Carter, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Symone.
Of course. So it's been a long time since we had you on here, Carter. Back, finally. Carter, it's been another exciting week for the Georgia high school basketball playoffs. Let's start with the most exciting game that you've seen so far.
So unfortunately, I was not at the Pebblebrook and Milton game. That would probably be up there. I know that our colleague Dan McDonald was there, and it was kind of filled with a little bit of controversy, a lot of
controversy.
There's a lot of tweets that are out there about it. Unfortunately, I was not there. I feel like I was one of the only people that wasn't there, but I did see the Sequoyah take on Kell, which was an amazing game in itself. I mean, the second half in that game was just back and forth. Like, I don't know how many lead changes and ties that they had along the course of that game. It was like Kell would go up 4-6 points, and then Sequoyah would cut it down, take a lead themselves. And I think Sequoyah went up like 7 points late in the fourth quarter. And then Kell came right back. They got a couple of turnovers and ended up taking a 1-point lead, and then ended up fouling Kyle Keener with about 8 seconds left, which is the one person that you probably do not want to foul in all of this state. I think he shoots over 90% from the free throw line. So he connected on 2 free throws, and Sequoyah got a stop to win the game. So, I mean, that was a really exciting game. It was a good atmosphere, packed house. I mean, it just seemed like across the board we kind of had that. And that's the way it goes with Georgia high school basketball. We just get like the best environments for these games. And, you know, you can't really go wrong wherever you go.
Definitely. Did Sequoyah win by like 1 point?
Sequoyah won by 1 point. So when Kyle was fouled, they were down by 1, and he shot a 1-and-1 and made both of them.
Dang, that's the worst way to lose. I'm sorry. It's the worst way to lose. It's out of your control. You know, like you say, you got Kyle Keener going to the free throw line. It's a 90% chance he's going to knock them both down. That's the hardest part about these playoffs, that somebody has to lose. But
it really is.
So, Carter, like I said, it's been a while since we talked. Who has been catching your eye throughout these playoffs?
So I'll just start with the same game, just because I was watching that game, and, you know, Peyton Marshall played really well for Kell. I mean, Sequoyah doesn't have a ton of size, so it's a little bit of a misnomer there, because he's kind of playing against guys that are much smaller than he is. But he did everything for them. Like, they would just throw it up to him, and he would, you know, lay the ball in. He shot free throws really well. He got fouled a bunch, made a bunch of free throws. He was really impressive. And then on the Sequoyah side, Preston Parker is a junior guard for them, and he was amazing in that game too. He scored 28 points, did it from everywhere. He was getting into the paint, getting to the rim, making crafty finishes around the rim. He shot it really well, and he showed a lot of confidence. He had kind of those shots, a couple of those shots where you're like, I don't know that that's a good shot to take, and he knocked it down, and it's like, okay, that's fine then. So he was really good, and kind of showed that he can be kind of a guy to look for, you know, during the travel season and into next year, as kind of the main guy for Sequoyah with all their seniors leaving. And then the night before, I watched Berkmar and Grayson, and Malik Ewan, I've talked about him so much, I feel like, on these videos, just as a guy that you really can't replicate, and a guy that just, it can be so dominant. And he showed exactly that in the fourth quarter. Like, he was fantastic. Like, everything you can think of. He was rebounding, he was blocking shots, he was getting dunks, he was playing a little bit of the point, like kind of like a point center. But everything you can ask for out of a guy like that, like just the skill level he showed was amazing. And then on the other end, it's a shame that he had to lose, but Sha'Carri Harris for Grayson, he shot it unbelievably. Like, they were just giving him the ball, and he would just kind of make these shots where, like, there's no chance that's going in, and it goes in. And like, some of them he was getting fouled on, and he was still making. And, you know, I don't know how many points he finished with, but he finished with probably over 20, and he probably hit 5 or 6 threes. A lot of those down the stretch in the second half. He was kind of their go-to guy. So he had one of the better games. And granted, I haven't been down there to see it, but Woodville Tompkins in 2A made the Final Four, and they have a guy, Lucas Platana, who's a senior guard. He was kind of an all-region guy down there. He's been over 20 points in every game, and he scored 38 in a Sweet 16 win over Raven Gap. And he's a guy that really shoots it really well. Probably one of the better shooters in the state. And, you know, it's a team down in Savannah, so they probably don't get as much pub as they should. And, you know, people may not know his name, but, you know, if he starts to make noise in the Final Four and maybe a state championship, you know, people will definitely know that name for sure.
Definitely. 38-point performance is definitely going to get some people driving that. What's it, 4 hours down?
It's a ways.
If he keeps that up, definitely going to be a name we're going to continue to hear. But Carter, of course, we love you you give such detailed breakdowns. I love it. But what do you think was the biggest surprise so far, in your opinion, in the playoffs?
So I don't know what hasn't been a surprise, to be completely honest. Like, if I look across the board, I'm just like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe that happened. So, I mean, if you just look across the board, there's a lot of like new programs that you wouldn't expect or haven't been there before that are making these Final Fours. And it's fun to see, you know, if you look across like 2A and 3A, you know, you have, you know, like in 2A, you have Pace Academy gets upset and by Butler, and Columbia loses, and, you know, 6A, like Wheeler goes down, and, you know, some of the better teams in 7A. Granted, in 7A, it could have been anybody. So, I mean, but even if you look at 7A, so people will say that those are like the powerhouse programs. But if you look at it, you know, between the four of those programs, Norcross is the only one that's won a state title in the last 20 years. And a couple of those teams, I don't think have ever won state titles. So they're looking for either their first in a long time. So that's fun too, even though they're kind of the powerhouse programs in the state. And when I go back to those upsets, how about the Augusta area? Like, the Augusta area came away with all those upsets and have so many teams. So it's just a good time to be in Augusta. I mean, Westside had a big win over Columbia, and Butler had a big win against Pace, and Grovetown gets a big win. Thompson's in the Final Four. So, I mean, Cross Creek is in the Final Four. So, I mean, if you're in Augusta, it's a good time to be a basketball fan.
Definitely. A lot of surprises, like you said. It's hard to narrow down.
It's just so many to even count at this point.
So looking forward, this is, what's today? Thursday. A lot of teams are now in the Final Four. What specific matchups are you going to be looking out for?
I think you kind of have to look out for all of them. But the 7A matchups, you can't go wrong. I mean, you really can't. When you get Berkmar and Pebblebrook, and then you get Norcross and Newton, I think you're going to get two really good games. I wish they were on the same day, but I'm not the only one that feels that way. But I think you're going to get two really good games. I think 6A, I think you get really good games. I think Sequoyah and Buford's a really good game. I mean, you go across the board. I mean, you're going to see a lot of talented kids and a lot of talented teams. And, you know, the further you go down, maybe the teams that are out of the metro, you see some players and some teams that maybe you haven't seen before, maybe you haven't heard of. So if you go to Macon for a couple of days, or, you know, you decide to drive down for every day or whatever, I think you're going to come away, you know, with a couple of good games in state championships, just because the Final Four matchups are so good.
Definitely. Well, Carter, it's been a crazy few weeks in the playoffs. Glad we were able to get you back on here today to share some of your things that you've seen, some of the players that you've been looking out for. But guys, I'm Symone Stanley. This is Carter Wilson, back again with another Ryze recap. Thank you guys so much for joining us.